Hello everybody, my name is KirkpattieCake. I'm an author and robot, and today we're going to talk about Mary. And I know you know Mary because everybody knows at least one Mary. And what Mary am I talking about? It is in fact the Mary Sue. If you've been around creative writing circles or fanfic circles, online writing circles, you've probably or ever in a critique, maybe with your own work even, you've probably heard the term Mary Sue somewhere. Maybe it's been applied to your work or somebody else's work, or you've personally applied it to somebody. And so we're going to get into what exactly is a Mary Sue, how to identify it, and is it a good or a bad thing, or is it kind of neutral? But before we get started, first, remember to like, share, or subscribe this video if you enjoy what I do on this channel, and let me know if you have any suggestions for content you'd like to see or what would be helpful. If it's creative, it's about writing, if it's a book review or a movie review, let me know down below and I will take a look at it. The second thing is, it is also March, so LBRY for April is currently up. Find a link in the description below for the prompt for next month, and write something. If you have something that fits the prompt, feel free to submit that, or write something new, and I read them all next month. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys submit and trying to do better at reading things to make it more fun. So check it out, join us, be part of the Patty Wagon because it is a good time. Anyways, so what is a Mary Sue? Technically, Mary Sue has a bunch of different forms. There's no specifically determined how she has to look, how she has to act, but there are aspects of a Mary Sue that will always out her. So while there are no specific characteristic tropes that she has to have in order to be a Mary Sue, there are ways to identify her. Now, everybody can pretty much agree on the phenomena existing and how in identifying a Mary Sue, but not on what the specific characteristics of a Sue are. Usually, some of the things that a Mary Sue contains are her perceived importance to the story, being the most important thing ever, which isn't damning in of itself. If you look at a lot of sci-fi and fantasy stories, many of them have a plot line that is the chosen one or something like that, so that's not damning in of itself. They've also got a physical design specifically, very often, not every time, but very often, they are absolutely gorgeous, but they think that they are average looking. They will even look at other characters in the story and be like, gosh dang it, I wish I was as pretty as you. And then the other character that she admires will be like, girl, you crazy, because you are so hot, I would kill to be you. And like every guy in the atmosphere around her notices that she's hot and wants to be with her. Maybe you're even starting, international warfare because she is so gosh dang beautiful. You have to have her, and she just thinks that she is average, maybe even below average. Now again, that's not damning in and of itself either, especially if you would like to have, a One Direction song as your character's battle cry. But it's an amalgamation of all of these things that creates the Mary Sue. Finally, another major sign that your character might be a Mary Sue is that they have an overabundance of irrelevant skills or an over-idealized nature. A Mary Sue usually constitutes a self-insert of the author, typically female, but I've seen male authors insert themselves as this Mary Sue character who is a female. You can also see there's a male version of a Mary Sue that I would call a Gary Sue because it's not quite the same thing. But the female version is an idealized version of the author, and the author kind of living personal wishes, some self-fulfillment, some fantasy, and it often comes out in some very specific ways. She is exotically beautiful, like I had just said. She often might have unusual hair or eye colors. She might often have, different eye colors, things that make her very special and stand out. That's not to say these specific things always mean the character is a Mary Sue, because you can have reasons for those things. But if you pile all of this on and you look at the character, you'll see it. But again, none of these individual traits create the Mary Sue, and a character having all of these traits also doesn't necessarily constitute it as a Mary Sue. You'll see what I mean in a little bit. You can have characters that have these traits without them being a Mary Sue. It all depends on how they interact with the story around them, and we'll get into that in just a little bit when we get past the more superficial signs of a Mary Sue. She often may also have a cool or exotic name. She is very talented in maybe some obscure things or things that don't really matter often. I've noticed with Mary Sue's, the characters will speak like a bunch of languages, or they'll be really good at instruments, or if it's a fantasy or a sci-fi, they'll suddenly just be really, really good with guns or weapons. You know, look over at Rey from the new Star Wars series. She was just good with weapons she was just insta good. Beat all of the guys that have been doing it all of their life because Sue. She may have exceptional talents in an implausibly wide array of areas. You know, she's amazing at cooking. She's amazing at the arts. She's amazing at like 5 instruments. She speaks 4 languages, and she's only 17. And or she may possess a skill that is rare or non-existent in the setting of the story. Now, this is really what makes the Mary Sue stand out, and often where authors fall short in realizing that their character is a Mary Sue. She often lacks any realistic or at least story-relevant character flaws, and the flaws that she is given are endearing. So if we go back to the original thing that I just said, where the chick is super attractive, but she doesn't see herself as attractive, low self-esteem is an excellent character flaw. However, if that character flaw of low self-esteem does not affect the story somehow, and like, say she gets taken advantage of because she has low self-esteem, she doesn't think she's worth it, so she goes out with the wrong guy. If she doesn't have consequences for her character flaws, then it's not a character flaw. Another thing I often have read with Mary Sue style characters is maybe the character is kind of arrogant, the character is kind of hot-headed. Those are also excellent character flaws because it makes them harder to work with. However, if your character is hot-headed or arrogant and is constantly making decisions to push the boundaries or to do things that she was told that she's not supposed to do, and then there are no consequences whatsoever, it never turns out poorly for her, her friends never hate her, she gets into fights with her teammates or with her friends or with her parents, and they all just say, okay, fine, do whatever you want, and there's no negative reaction, no negative consequences to her for her hot-headedness, then it's not actually a character flaw. It's not being treated like a character flaw. A character flaw is something that actually hurts the character in whatever it is they're doing. It's something that actually holds the character back or causes them to have consequences in the story they're written in. This is also another very, very common one with Mary Sue's that are both male and female, is the story will introduce this really powerful person, like say a mafia boss that is super scary to everybody and super brutal, and nobody wants to disagree with him, nobody wants to cross him, and when the Mary is going to go and meet the really, really big baddie, everybody is like, don't talk back to him, you don't want to get shot, he will kill you because he does not deal with attitude. And of course, your Mary Sue over here is arrogant and kind of hot-headed, and she's like, I'm not going to listen to you, whatever. So then she gets in front of the big baddie, and then she starts back-talking to the big baddie, and then tries to have this tension of, oh, what's he going to do? But every time you have a situation where it beefs up this character as, do not cross this guy, everybody's scared of him, and then you've got your main character who trash talks him or back talks to him. He goes, lady, you got balls. I am so impressed right now. None of my men that I've had for 15 years will even talk back to me. You are one hot firecracker. I like that. I see this so much. And it just goes to show, it's another example of how this character does not have any consequences for her actions. She can be arrogant to whoever she wants, she can disobey whoever she wants, she can fight with whoever she wants, she can probably punch that guy in the jaw and nothing bad will actually happen. I've seen this in many stories before too, where the character actually gets into some really bad situations, is up head-to-head with the main bad guy, and the author doesn't actually want to do anything bad to that character, so the bad guy character just kind of walks away, when in all reality the bad guy character would be doing terrible things to that character. But in the mind of the author who loves this character, who is living through this character, he cannot actually torment that character. He cannot put her through trauma, he cannot stab her, he cannot hurt her, he cannot do anything that would disable her or make her life harder or traumatize her, because no harm is actually allowed to come to a Mary Sue. Unless it makes her cuter in her love interest's eyes. Like, this again goes back to the flaws. The flaw situation. If the flaw does not stop her, then if the flaw does not make things harder for her or get in the way of what her MO is, then it's not a real flaw. So let's consider a situation where you've got Mary going up head to head with the big bad baddie, and she is overpowered for whatever reason. This isn't the end of the story, and so things just have to be made more complicated for her. We just have to have her try and fail because this is maybe the second act. And so she gets stabbed in the leg, and very badly, and bad guy gets away. Well, she's not a warrior. She just is kind of been stabbed in the leg. And instead of having that issue with her leg stop her, slow her down, make her unable to move on and on and on, she struggles herself back up to her feet, and she struggles along, and she doesn't let her comrades that come and find her, help her along until her love interest shows up. And then she just pushes on long enough to be like, no, I can't. I have to follow through. I have to avenge my father. And then, she just gives her statement of why she is so admirable before she passes out, and then it lets her love interest, carry her to safety, and then they can bond or whatever. And it doesn't actually ever endanger her. It just is used as a tool for her to maybe bond with the dude, but she doesn't actually need the dude to help her. And in this situation, it really would have made sense for that guy to stab her and then run off. If they had some kind of rivalry, it would either be kidnap that chick or kill that chick, not like stab her in the leg and then run off. But nothing, like I said, nothing super bad can ever actually happen to the Mary Sue. It's only stuff that can make her look cuter to the love interest or make her look more badass to the writer, because you can never have trauma happen. You can never have true trauma happen to a Mary Sue. It's an author's self-fulfillment. Mary Sues will often have some kind of tragic backstory, and again, none of these things on their own automatically make your character a Mary Sue. You can have wonderfully blessed backstories. You can have completely traumatic backstories. Make those backstories show in the character. Oftentimes with Mary Sues, when you use the dramatic backstory, it's meant as a way to try to make the reader bond with the character more than they naturally would, because, well, you wouldn't hate this girl whose father walked out and is an orphan, would you? So she's got this super traumatic background. You wouldn't hate this person who, only has one parent, and their one parent has a bunch of debt and is also in the hospital with cancer that they can't pay for. You wouldn't hate this character, would you? And sometimes, specifically with Mary Sue's, these dramatic backstories are just an attempt to make you like that character, because you wouldn't be a terrible person who doesn't like this character who's had a traumatic experience, would you? That's where it's iffy. In addition to the traumatic backstory, then the character, the Mary herself, will not really necessarily recognize that she has a traumatic or a difficult backstory or a traumatic or difficult life, and they just see how hopeful she is, how optimistic she is, and they'll call her brave and courageous and have so many virtues because she doesn't let any of those bad things in her life get to her, and she is just so resilient that everybody admires her. Often with Mary Sue's, because of this, you'll know, often with Mary Sue's, specifically because of this situation, often when you've got a Mary Sue, you'll know that she's a Mary Sue, or you'll know who the bad guys are, because all of the bad guys will not think that she's virtuous for getting through her trauma or her hard life. They will actually just be made more bitter by her having a good attitude. Because with Mary Sue's, all the bad guys are very obviously bad and snooty and just hate her by virtue of her being the best character. And so anytime she comes out and she exists, the bad guy characters that you're supposed to know are terrible people will just hate her. And especially hate her when somebody is showing that they like her, and or when she's sharing her traumatic background and how resilient she is. Most commonly when I'm reading, I'm looking for Mary Sue as an idealized character. So like I said at the beginning of this video, there are a lot of interpretations for what constitutes a Mary Sue, a lot of definitions. Nobody really agrees on them. And so when I'm looking at a Mary Sue, I'm evaluating the depth of a character. I'm evaluating how that character interacts with the world, how much their action is believable, how their decisions show through in their actions, and how their actions affect the people that are around them. If the character makes, if the character is hot-headed and starts defying everybody with every which way and getting in arguments with everybody and is just kind of standoffish, and everyone around her is just like, slay, queen, slay, I'm like, it doesn't really work that way. If she can't actually get hurt by the bad guy, if bad things cannot actually befall upon her, and her friends don't actually walk away from her when they push her far enough, because she's kind of being a dick. Like, if there are no fights, it's not to say that, if a woman character, it's not to say that if a female character, is standoffish or hot-headed and gets in a fight with friends, she has to have no friends ever. But her and her friends should be able to, like, argue and get mad and show that they're not agreeing, rather than her yelling at him, you're stupid and blah, 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 and I'm not doing what you say, and he goes, fine, that's okay. And then in the next scene, it's all just water under a bridge. Nothing happened. There were no consequences to her actions. And when she, ran ahead in battle, or when she ran ahead to go and meet this person that she shouldn't have met because he was dangerous, and then she got kidnapped, and then she ran away, and nothing bad happened to her, that's kind of a sign that she is a Sue. Because no consequences happen. She doesn't have to ask for help. She doesn't need her friends. She doesn't need anything. And there is no reason for her to rely on anybody, because she knows, and the author knows, nothing bad is ever going to happen to this character. You can go and be as dangerous as you possibly want, because, well, you're the main character, and you're not actually going to get hurt. You're not actually going to be stopped from accomplishing your goals. You might be set back a little bit, but nothing actually terrible is going to happen to you. It is, with all of that, and then with her being the only person that can solve anything in the plot, the only person who is actively doing something in the story to accomplish something, the only person who has any purpose whatsoever in the story, and without her, nothing could be accomplished, because nobody is taking action. And then when every male character loves her, and then every female character who is not her best friend hates her because she is so gorgeous, and she don't know she's beautiful, that's not gonna work. That's kind of a sign to me that she is a Sue. Now, you can have any and all of these aspects built into a character. She can be gorgeous. She can be desirable by every man and hated by every woman. She can have two colored eyes and weird hair and a weird name. But she has to have stakes. She has to have flaws and setbacks. And when you don't do that, she becomes an OP who can do whatever she wants. She's an idealized character living through a fantasy, in the same way that you would imagine somebody in a dream world can get away with whatever they want because they control everything. She's admired by everyone who's a good guy because she's virtuous, and she's hated by everybody who's a bad guy, or even slightly bad, who you're supposed to hate, because she's virtuous. And the bad writing just says, well, the characters that don't like her are terrible, and the only reason they wouldn't like her is because they're bad and she's good. Supposed to be good. Honestly, when I see a Mary Sue and the bad guys that hate her, I can't even fault the bad guys for being bad guys. I'm like, you were just specifically created to be biased like this. I hate the Mary Sue characters much more than I actually hate the bad guys in Mary Sue stories, to be honest. And I think this can be one of the areas where it is most difficult for authors to understand, or for writers to understand, where their character is a Mary Sue. If you say, give them a flaw, and they go, okay, so this character is weaker, or she's not self-assured, or she's clumsy, and they write those into this character, but the character doesn't actually suffer. But you go, where are the character flaws? Well, she's clumsy. Well, she doesn't realize how beautiful she is. Well, she's so selfless that she sacrifices herself. Okay, but where is she suffering for those things? I actually have seen quite a few people, when you say, what is the character flaw? And the character flaw is that they're too virtuous. Now, it's not that you can't use too much of virtue as a character flaw. You can. I've got an angel character who is very virtuous, but by virtue of being extremely virtuous, that has to have some disadvantages that get in the way and cause them strife. So if your character is so virtuous, and their flaw is that they're so virtuous, then their virtuousness has to hurt them. When you say, what is the character flaw? Okay, show me how that character flaw makes their life more difficult and actually adds to their story. What hurts them? I see this in stories too. I think this was an unpregnant. When the narrator of the book tells you how you're supposed to feel about somebody, oh, I'm super popular, oh, I'm super good, oh, everybody loves me, and I'm this perfect everything, but you don't actually see it in the character's actions, all you do is you tell the reader not to trust the narrator. So if you're going to make a claim about character, you have to show those things about the character, or else I'm going to believe the actions of the character over what the narration tells me about the character. And I see it often as a shortcut, especially for Sues, to tell the reader how they're supposed to feel about the Sue, and then that's just the end of it. Like, if everybody in this book loves the Sue, you're also supposed to love the Sue. No questions asked, because they don't question why they're supposed to love the Sue. You're not allowed to question it either. So those can be some dead giveaways, and if you feel like you have to tell the reader how incredible this character is through the narration, other characters telling the author, other characters talking about the Mary Sue style character doesn't necessarily make them a Sue. It's when the author kind of breaks the fourth wall and directly starts telling the reader, this character is this awesome, or this character is this terrible, and you should hate them. Now, none of this is to say that you can't have a completely beautiful, low self-esteem, completely talented character in your story, but it has to make sense, and there have to be weaknesses in order for the reader to identify with the character, in order for the reader to like the character. You'll still find this type of character, the Mary Sue, in all sorts of things, and you'll find the Mary Sue in a lot of things that are popular. Mary Sue style characters are actually very popular in anime, so it's not like they don't exist, and it's not like they don't have their place. There's always a certain time and place for certain things, but also know that it kind of gets in the way and can also be distracting to the reader or look two-dimensional if your character is just everybody loves them, no flaws, no suffering. Love them. Personally, I require a little bit of struggle from a character in order to like them. I require a little bit of let me see them push their emotional line, or what makes them go crazy, what kind of breaks them, and show me that. Show me them doing what they're told they're not supposed to do and then suffering the consequences for it. I want to see that. That is so heart-wrenching. To just see this character try so hard and fail. That's... I think that's one of the fun things about Bleed More, Body More, is Joey tries to keep it together so hard and she can't. Eventually, she can't keep it together anymore. Okay, those are my thoughts on a Mary Sue, kind of a generalization. There's so much information and so much literature on what a Mary Sue is, what it looks like, how different people interpret it. These are just my thoughts on it, and I would love to hear yours down below. How do you identify a Mary Sue? Have you written a Mary Sue? Do you currently write a Mary Sue? Do you find the term Mary Sue to be derogative or offensive when it's applied to your character, or does it kind of go, oh, I should fix that? Let me know what you think on the subject in the comments down below. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it, because it's such a wide variety. Oh, before I go, I do want to mention, I don't know if I can if there's actually enough content for me to want to do a whole video on what a man Sue looks like. But often it's like, he bangs all of the chicks, and he is a nerd, but he is super cool nerd. He's like the buff nerd. I would say the main character in Triple X Seamus is a version of a man Sue. Is almost a version of a man Sue. He had some bad things happen to him, for sure. And if the bad things didn't happen to him, if they just kind of teased him that bad things could happen, and then bad things didn't actually happen to him, then he would totally be a 100% Sue. But he is the archetype of a Sue, which is every chick wants to bang him, including his sister, and he's super buff, but he's nerdy. Yeah, I'm sure you recognize that character type, right? Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Please remember to like this video, subscribe for more, and give me any of your recommendations on content you'd like to see me cover. Until next time, thank you so much for being here. Get the Dead End Drive audiobook when it comes out, and have a great weekend. Don't die.
Dear Madam Astra,
That's me.
we regret to inform you that on August 1st, your employer, Agatha Jane Benedict, owner of the Benedict estate, peacefully passed away in her sleep.
Oh, that's so sad. Wait. Let me try that again.
Oh my goodness, that's so sad.
Yeah, I think I'm ready. With millions of dollars on the line and the opportunity for your every need to be taken care of for life, tell me, is there anything more valuable than that? I didn't think so.
Dead End Drive is a dark comedy novel that makes 3 promises. 1, an illustrious estate in Louisiana. 2, an opulent dinner affair for all in attendance. And 3, and most importantly of all, lots and lots of competitive murder. So if you're looking for a cozy book to settle in with for the spooky season, I've only got one question for you. Will I see you at the Will reading?
Only losers lose!